Night begins with a birthday and many drinks, and it ended with a drunk driver driving through town. By morning, a man was found slumped over the steering wheel, dead, but the person responsible didn't run for long. In fact, she walks right into a police station just hours after, and the motive for why she did what she did has been heavily debated. This case would go on to divide opinions across the UK. Was she acting in fear, or was this something else? I'll let you decide. Meet Martyna Ogonowska. Martyna was born in Poland and came to England when she was around 12 years old with her mother and her brother. The move to England was tied to troubles at home in Poland, but the details on this are rather sparse. When she arrived, her family settled in Peterborough, and this wasn't an easy move. Martyna knew very little English, and at school, she was reportedly bullied quite a lot. By the middle of her teenage years, she was more or less a dropout from school. Around this time, Martyna claimed that she was violently essayed by a man. She says that she was only 14. The trauma from this caused PTSD, which people claim is the reason for what happened on the 21st of October 2018. Things for Martyna didn't get much better after 14. By the time she was 16, she became a mother, and the father wasn't involved. Raising a child can be difficult, and Martyna suffered from postnatal depression as a result of the toll. Finally, by the time she was 18, she found some relief from parenting by spending time with her friends, and one of these friends introduced her to a 23-year-old man named Philip. Philip too was Polish, and when he reached adulthood, he seemed to have done what plenty of young Polish men did in that period. He looked to England for work and a better shot at life, and he moved to Peterborough at the end of November 2017. He worked in factories and later a van driver, and within a short period of time, he had a room of his own. The people who knew him described him as steady, helpful, and soft-natured. Family said he was diligent, confident, caring, and crucially, not the sort to answer problems with aggression. Philip would frequently call back home and tell his family and friends about the new friends he had made in England. On Saturday, the 20th of October 2018, the evening began in an ordinary enough way. Martyna was hosting a small party at her home for one of her friends named Peter. In attendance at this party was also Philip, and he turned up with flowers for Martyna in an attempt to win her affections. Peter arrived with his girlfriend named Sophie. Also, Martyna's mum was invited around. Later on, the group headed out to a bar in the city centre to party. They were all drinking alcohol. They stayed out late, but as the night went on, Martyna's mother went home early. By around 2 AM, the remaining four left the bar together and walked back towards Philip's car. Sophie and Peter were in the back, Martyna was in the front passenger seat, and Philip was driving. But Philip had been drinking quite heavily, and he was over the limit. At times, Philip was driving far too fast. Martyna was so frightened that she started to cry. Inside the car, the mood turned. Martyna had accidentally sat on Philip's cigarettes, and this sparked into an argument in an already precarious situation. Martyna kept telling Philip to slow down and to stop, but he kept telling her to shut up. The thing was, Philip was supposed to be taking them home, but he wasn't. He was just speeding around the city, and this was what was panicking her. The drink, the speed, and the fact that nobody seemed to know where exactly Philip was going. But then, Martyna was able to get out of the car, and Philip got out after her. And what followed was the first physical confrontation of the night in the middle of the street. The argument carried on outside of the car. Philip then grabbed Martyna by the neck and pushed her down on the ground. Peter and Sophie had to get out of the car to break it up. Martyna said she wanted to go home right away and wanted nothing more to do with Philip. However, the three of them convinced her to get back inside the vehicle. Philip was back in the driver's seat and everyone returned to their previous positions. But the arguing continued, and Philip was getting increasingly more aggressive. The car was still stationary and they hadn't yet set off. Then, Sophie later said that she saw Philip put his hand under Martyna's shirt, and then Martyna pushed his hand away. Following this, Philip put his hand on Martyna's thigh. Martyna later said that he was also pushing her, grabbing at her shoulder, pulling her hair, and slapping her with an open hand. Then came the moment that everything turned. Sophie and Peter said that they heard a heavy sound come from the front, a strange sound that they couldn't quite explain. Martyna had plunged a small stainless steel kitchen knife straight into Philip's chest. The entire blade went in, and the blade pierced his heart. For a second, Martyna looked at what she had done. She then gripped the knife and pulled it back out. She immediately opened the door, screamed, and ran. Sophie and Peter followed her, because at first they thought she had just punched him. However, when they caught up with her, they saw that she had a knife in her hand, and the knife was covered in blood. The three then left the scene. The three walked to the home of Martyna's ex-boyfriend. His name was Ahmed. Martyna was shaking and struggling to speak. Tears were streaming down her face. At Ahmed's house, the knife was washed, and she explained that she had stabbed Philip. She also contacted her mum on Facebook and said that she had plunged the knife into Philip and that it had gone through his heart. Martyna then called a cab, which soon arrived. Her friends pleaded with her not to go, but she didn't listen. The taxi driver could tell that she had been crying for some time, so he asked if she was all right. But the only thing she said was, "I have to do this." He had no idea what she meant. Meanwhile, at around 7 a.m, a nurse drove past Philip's silver car and noticed him slumped inside. When she came back a few minutes later and he hadn't moved, she stopped, went over, and knocked on the window. Of course, there was no response. So she opened the door and checked for a pulse, but there was none. When she lifted his shirt, she saw the blood and a wound in his chest. She started CPR with help from a passerby. They kept going until the paramedics arrived, but there were no signs of life. Philip was pronounced dead at the scene at around 7:10 a.m. Not long after this, Martyna reached Thorpe Wood police station. The station's door was closed, so she spoke to the officer over the telephone outside. She said, "I think I've killed someone." When the police came to the door to let her in, she handed over the knife, along with the clothing that she said she had been wearing when she killed him. Following this, she was arrested. On Monday the 22nd of October, Martyna was charged with murder. On Tuesday the 23rd, she was brought before the Cambridge magistrates for a short hearing. The case went straight up to the Crown Court, where she was remanded in custody. On the 10th of December 2018, she formally denied both murder and possessing a knife. Because of this flat-out denial, a trial was set for April 2019. When the trial got underway, the prosecution laid out a very simple case. They said that this was not a panic stabbing, nor was it some confused flurry. Their claim was that this was a deliberate thrust with a knife which they learned she had taken out with her earlier in the evening. From the prosecution's point of view, the case was solely about the blade being brought from home, which to them hinted at some kind of forward planning. One of the first major witnesses was Sophie. She gave the jury her point of view of the night from the back seat. She also described the birthday gathering at Martyna's flat. She said that she saw that very same knife on a plate and later in the kitchen. Sophie also said that she saw his hand go up Martyna's shirt and then onto her thigh. Then came the hard thump, the knife into his chest. The jury then also heard from a man who knew Martyna. He told the court that Martyna had once had some trouble with another woman, and because of this trouble, she would sometimes carry with her a knife. The jury then heard Martyna's police interview. In the interview, she says that she thought she had killed someone, but insisted that it had been an accident and that she had been defending herself. She said she had met Philip only days earlier and that she barely knew him. She also explained that she had told him not to drive because he was so drunk. Then she recalled the sequence of attacks she was subjected to by Philip. Peter testified too, which corroborated all of this. But then the story begins to diverge. Sophie and Martyna's stories do differ when it comes to the knife. Martyna said that after they got back into the car, Sophie got her attention without the boys knowing and showed her the knife. Apparently she said that she might need it and then handed it to Martyna. So basically Martyna claimed that she never went out with a knife that night. It was given to her. On the witness stand, Martyna described being frightened by Philip's driving, so she showed him the knife, hoping that he would stop, but she claimed that it just led to a struggle, and that during the struggle, the blade had gone into his heart by accident. She then looked up, saw the knife protruding from his chest, and pulled it out. The question in the court by this point was, how did the knife find its way into the car? The defense said that Sophie had given it to Martyna shortly before the stabbing, but Sophie denied it, and the prosecution said that Martyna had brought it out from home herself. Then came the psychiatric battle. The defense psychiatrist said that Martyna had PTSD from the previous alleged SA that she was subjected to when she was 14. Prosecution psychiatrists, however, took a much less supportive view. They claimed that she was functioning normally enough to be fully responsible for what she did. By the end of the case, the jury had 3 big questions in front of them. Was the stabbing deliberate? Did she act lawfully in self-defense? And whether or not her mental condition was so reduced that her responsibility for murder was no longer the right verdict. On the 25th of April, 2019, after the trial had run for about 3 weeks, the jury came back with its answer. By a majority of 11-1, they convicted Martyna of murder and of possessing a bladed article. Soon after, she was sentenced. The judge made some statements. He said that he was sure that she had taken the knife out with her earlier that night. He then agreed that Philip had assaulted her outside the car and that he had also been violent and had essayed her shortly before he was killed. But he also said that this was not a lawful self-defense killing because she had brought the knife to the scene and had a chance to leave and seek help. The judge also said that he was sure that she had not meant to kill him, but that she wanted to cause him serious harm. Starting from the 25-year point for the knife murder, the judge cut the minimum term down to 17 years. This was because of her age, immaturity, mental limitations, lack of an intention to kill, and the element of provocation. And with this, Martyna was taken away. The case then moved slowly into the appeal courts. Martyna believed that there had been a grave miscarriage of justice. On the 29th of June 2023, the conviction challenge was argued in full. Her new legal team said that the jury should have been given another route, and that route should have been manslaughter. This was based on the loss of control under the circumstances. But in September of 2023, the Court of Appeal refused the renewed bid to appeal the conviction. In effect, the murder verdict stayed exactly where it was. In March of 2025, she appealed again, but the court said that the judge had already made a very substantial reduction from the 25-year starting point and that a 17-year sentence was more than fair. The appeal was rejected. The murder conviction was intact and the sentence was intact. Public reaction to the case was deeply divided. Some saw Martyna as a frightened and traumatized teenager, trapped in a situation that spiraled out of control, reacting in panic to fear, aggression, and SA. Others saw something very different, a deliberate act that went far beyond self-defense, a line crossed that could never be justified. And for others, the truth sits somewhere in between. They recognize the fear, the pressure, and the chaos of that night, but still struggle to accept the outcome. It's a case that leaves people asking the question, when fear takes over, how far is too far? Getting out of the car and leaving is also easier said than done, and often during an SA, the victim freezes. Pepper spray is also classed as a prohibited firearm under the Firearms Act of 1968, and possession of pepper spray can lead up to a 10-year prison sentence. Maybe if there was a safe but effective weapon, women would feel safe and would not need to reach for a kitchen knife as personal protection. So, is 17 years for taking a life too harsh? I leave that for you to decide.